What if your situation is not your destiny and you always have choices when it comes to the design of your legacy? I'd like to welcome Jonathan and Jake to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely Friday. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Angelina. Jake Morrill here from Generation to Generation Leadership Coaching.
So good to be here. Jonathan Schoonover with 1010 Strategies.
Yes, and I think that today you're joining either from Nashville or Knoxville, Tennessee in the United States.
That's right. We're both outside, or I'm outside Knoxville. Jonathan, I think you're in Knoxville,
I'm in
Tennessee.
Knoxville. That's right. Knoxville, Tennessee.
Well,
Yeah.
welcome, welcome. So, in our preamble, in terms of breaking the ice and figuring out the niche of each party, we talked about some of the concerns in 2020, the trends that we're seeing with clients and high net worth individuals, families, next gen members as they're coming into whether it's a company or they're in the middle of succession or a variety of scenarios. So, I thought we'd start with you, Jake, and kind of understand what are some of the challenges that individuals and families, as well as organizations, what are they facing today? And I thought we could kind of jump in at this starting point.
Sure thing. Well, thanks. Great question. It is no secret that all over anxiety is ramped up. There's more shouting, more outrage, more reactivity. That makes it hard to think through complex challenges and even harder to think through complex relationships. So I promote people's right to take their time, to take a beat and think it through.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. One of the things that I read on your website is it was written, leadership isn't always about knowing all the answers. It's about asking better questions. So I thought to myself, and again, we chatted about this in the preamble, the number of times that an individual can be thrown into the deep end when it comes to responsibility, but
Mhm.
oftentimes there aren't the explicit conversations to prepare them for that moment. And so I thought that, you know, where might you start with, you know, advice you might give them, or what are a couple of those better questions, or how would you unwrap this hard topic, this complex subject?
Oh, sure. Um, often somebody in this situation, it can be so overwhelming. And I think for somebody to suddenly have a big inheritance without knowing who they are can be like driving a car without a steering wheel. And so talking to them about, where's this all headed? I might even ask them to write their own obituary. What do you want to be true when all is said and done? Um, and to ask them questions about, you know, um, what is the story you're telling yourself about this situation, and how is that helping or hindering you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of individuals, they are definitely lucky. They're privileged, and without a doubt, one doesn't take that opportunity for granted. But at the same time, that level of entering any type of position, whether it's within a family business or even just
Mhm.
coming into an inheritance and trying to figure out how to manage all of that, that is a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did talk about, the epidemic of loneliness out there of, how does one find individuals that they can confide in, especially
Right.
when they're surrounded by people that they don't want to look weak in front of.
Yeah, yeah, I think there is the pressure to pretend more expertise or more competence than one may have practiced or developed. And there's also, boy, I just see this the wariness of who's trying to exploit me, who's trying to and so finding confidants, finding thinking partners, and establishing these robust channels of trust and partnership, which is all that ever gets people through in life and in work, is so useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we also chatted about
Uh-huh.
was I don't know if the exact number, I think it's 124 trillion there's going to be this transfer. And whether that is to the wives, to the daughters, to the sons, that's a
Hmm.
huge amount of who will be the next leaders of society, who will be the next decision makers, again,
Yes.
whether it's within these private family businesses or again, within, I mean, you look at somebody like Mackenzie Scott, regarding that, fallout with Jeff Bezos, and yet
Sure.
she's, shaping society. And we're going to talk about philanthropy in a moment with Jonathan, but
Mhm.
I wondered, what needs to be in place prior to, as well as during, that individual's lifetime because again, you're kind of throwing them off of like, I think of it like not walk the plank regarding a pirate ship, but it's a little bit like going into the deep end and you want to make
Yeah.
the best decisions, but money is a magnifier, just as success and failure are.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. Money is a magnifier. It won't fix family fractures. It just exposes them. If somebody hasn't done the hard work of growing themselves up to that point, that is a lot of pressure to be unequipped at that moment. So early on, families investing in opportunities for people to develop a sense of who am I, not before what do I have, to have a sense of uh, an engagement with family history. Do they know where they come from? Not to reject it, not to worship it, but to have a sense of roots and a sense of a shared story more than a shared balance sheet. I think all of these kinds of understandings just help people find their footing in a time of upheaval, good or bad.
yeah, I think it's important what you just said more than a shared balance sheet because one of the things I was thinking about is how often, and I don't know if I'm bringing up a pink elephant in the room, but how often love can be conditional. Like,
Oh,
yeah, like not just don't make the family look bad, but we like you better when you perform well.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, right. And that expectation can also go the other way. We will care for you as long as you are in trouble or as long as you are, that people have these scripted roles that they act out. And when the trophy winner wants to take a beat and to try something new or be less than perfect, that can be a problem. When the troublemaker that everyone worries about decides to get his act together. So figuring out how families can let one another change and grow and develop and mature is just so important.
Yeah. So let me loop back to this idea of explicit communication. And what I mean by that, it comes
Hmm.
from an interview I saw with an author who wrote a book called Strangers in Paradise. And
Mm.
what he spoke about was taking his granddaughter to the Lego store. I think it was the granddaughter.
Uh-huh.
And instead of swiping the plastic card, he broke the $120 into smaller bills. And then
Huh.
she could see that there was a decision-making process, again, in the transfer of like I mean, obviously, like you're a little older than me, Jake, but let's say you're the son. So, in a sense of like, I'm transferring this decision making power to you, even if it's just
Yes.
Legos. And so,
Yes.
so in terms of explicit communication, I think there's this need to talk about things more. And so, when you have an individual, let's say that you're collaborating with, you're coaching and advising,
Hmm.
and where might you start them with? Because again, today's problems are complex, and
Hmm.
when you throw someone again into that deep end and they don't know how to manage that complex, like where do you start them? I mean, maybe you can give a success story or something where you kind of walked someone from A to Z regarding, because it is a complex world today and it's just getting more
Right.
and more, fast paced and that pressure is, yeah, not letting up.
I'm thinking about a daughter who was taking over she was fourth generation, taking over a company that her father had run for years and years. She had a very different style from him, and people noticed. People working in the company noticed, and she worked hard, and she and I worked together on how could she not be seen as exactly the opposite of her father, while also promoting and allowing over the next decade a new culture to take place, a new culture of shared leadership. Her father had been very much the one decider on the scene. And, she had a lot of respect for her father. This was not rejection. It was promoting shared leadership and perhaps a more sustainable style. So how could she promote that very different workplace culture while still honoring her father? That meant telling a story about it. It meant being clear for herself, and it meant being in touch with her father as well as key players on the scene. All of that. Um, I just have a lot of respect for how she managed that.
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking into that because there is something to be said about integrating the past. compared
Hmm.
to just going to one end of the spectrum or another. It's
Hmm.
like, how do you weave it all together? Like, how do you find what's brilliant and good and are the best practices and still honoring the past? And
Yeah. Yeah. In talking with people, whether it is a prior generation, or whether it is in their own life, a prior season, even if they are trying to outgrow or move beyond, to be grateful, for what came before, whatever that pattern of behavior and functioning was what helped me or my family survive through that season. So thank goodness. And now, something else for this day, for this age.
yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So, when one finds himself in a multi-generational family of wealth, and again, that's a specific niche because there's others that today are self-made successes, and I think two-thirds of
Mm,
today's affluent are self-made, and I think the
mm,
number actually might be a little bit higher. And so those are very driven individuals, the founders and the wealth creators and
yes.
so forth. But if we go back to this idea and the culture of a multi-generational family of wealth, sometimes you've spoken about how they can either rebel or they can be too compliant. And
Uh-huh.
so, it's so interesting this idea of identity, especially in designing a legacy, because at some point you've got to bring yourself to that. You got to bring your soul and your personality and your values in addition to
Right.
the shared values of the family. So, where would you like speak into an to an individual like I know you've talked about ancient principles, but like where is this rite of passage? Where do you start them? What are your thoughts here?
Hmm. Yeah. I think it is so useful however it happens. I mean, for teenagers, outward bound, for 20 somethings going off and developing their own professional identity, for, sometimes through marriage or even encounter of adversity, people develop their own story. I think that it often doesn't work if they only see themselves as individuals. So I talk about thinking about being a branch of a tree. Yes, you are separate and you are also connected, or a wave in the ocean, separate and connected, not one or the other. So how does all of your hard won individual gifts and wisdom, how does that work in relationship to this larger thing you're part of, family, business, etc.?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for speaking into that because I think a lot of times, and I can only imagine like the children of, let's say, Bill Gates or Elon Musk. I mean, there's a really big, footsteps or shoes to fill. And yet, I mean, we're talking about not obviously billionaires, but even just family businesses in our community or, whether it's, 4 generations or 14, but still it's this idea of, who does that person get to be in the shadow of that business, whether that business again is like Levi's jeans. I'm making this up. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about somebody I know. This is 2 years ago. He was very interested because of his own life and experience and exposure in a particular, I'll just say something going on in society. He organized a book club with his siblings and cousins where they all read about this thing, so they had common vocabulary, and then were able to make values-based decisions. They didn't all agree, but at least he was a family leader in helping them look together and equipping them to look at this thing in society that he cared about. He brought that into his family. Nobody else would have thought of that or imagined that. I just think everybody has a gift like that to bring. Are they invited? Are they recognizing in themselves, or are they just sitting at a family meeting, looking out the window, waiting for it to end? Which I just think is a shame, if so.
yeah. Oh, thank you for speaking into that. Yeah, I think that everyone needs to bring out that inner world and develop it and be more than just, it's like my mother once said, in her family, it's like there's 10 fingers on a hand, she's one out of 11, okay? And
Uh-huh.
so and they're all important, but somebody also needs to, just be more than, those two hands, in moments of their life, you know, to
Yeah.
grow past their family of origin, to like I think
Mm.
you've spoken about this concept of emotional maturity.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the conversations I'll have with clients early on is tell me about what the phrase adult in the room means. When you think of somebody who's the adult in the room, what are they doing? How do they act? and how would you see yourself in light of that? Is that, what would, if you were the adult in the room, how would you do that? And in that conversation, I'm trying to ask them to think about, what does maturity look like for them? Because maturity for someone might look like very calm, very quiet. For somebody else, it might look like finally stepping up and being the out loud leader that they've been trying to be. So it's across personalities, but yeah, maturity, so key.
Yeah, yeah. Before I transition over to Jake, before we talk about what legacy means to us personally, I wanted to talk to you about risk because,
Hmm.
again, when we're referring to these next gen family members and
Yeah.
or even the self-made executives that are founders or they're running a company, we
Uh-huh.
talked about the toll that it can take on their health to be such high performers. It takes the toll
Yes.
also on their relationships, etc. And yet to think of this idea of delegating, maybe to
Hmm.
finally take that vacation to Mexico or wherever it is,
Right.
just even just 2 weeks a year, just to step away from that business, maybe to get a little bit more work-life balance. But talk to me for a moment about that risk piece, because what got them, to be successful is one skill set. To
Yeah.
then get to a point of delegation and kind of evolving is a whole other, again, I'd call it like jumping off the diving board. It's
Right.
asking them to live outside of their comfort zone.
That's right. That's often where I'm coming on to stage with people, is that they've been successful by outworking, out dreaming, out hustling everyone else. And they're also burning out. They're getting exhausted. They're starting to have health trouble or marriage trouble, and it's not worth it. The calculation is tipped, and helping them figure out how to get what's in their head communicated to others, and to develop systems where they can trust that others who've often been at their side for a long time can actually, they have their back, they can be trusted. And so yeah, that is an important sort of next step if all that they've worked for is going to be sustained into the next season.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So an individual not only needs to, lean into uh, finding answers, inner peace, and developing that inner landscape of theirs, but then life gets even better, and they can go to Jonathan's office and come up with a philanthropic plan. So I thought we might transition over for a moment. Is there anything you'd like to share, Jonathan, regarding, even what you've seen with clients as they've evolved individually?
Yeah, I think it's fun to watch some of the transformation that happens when people can walk through and come alongside, me coming alongside them on their journey, essentially their journeys of generosity and what that means for them, and the way that once they kind of their eyes are open to this, that they can kind of see that and live into that. It's a special thing. It's a privilege to get to walk alongside people to do as they do that.
Yeah, and it can be a very new conversation for some individuals.
That's right. Yeah, for some families, I always say this, it doesn't take, a professional to walk along somebody to help them write a check, right? Anybody can be generous just with the writing of a check, or, opening a DAF and starting that. Like, you don't need professional help for that, but there are folks that come into, whether they have a liquidity event or something that happens, and they're ready to kind of they've been challenged and have some pain points around their giving, and they're ready to kind of look at this to be more strategic with it. Sometimes it helps to kind of do that, and have someone that can coach them and advise them along the way, that has been through things, that has seen a lot of fantastic organizations and work on the ground, and kind of point them in the right direction.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I just want to clarify for the listener that a DAF is a donor advised fund, right?
Thank you. Too many acronyms in this world. Yes, donor advised fund. That's right.
Well, I just find it interesting, like when you spoke about the liquidity event, because again, if there are individuals that are coming into money, whether it's an inheritance or through their parents, and a lot of parents keep money a secret, like it's an avoidance conversation, like they just don't want to talk about it. And so again, that someone can be listening to this for the first time and not even realize, like, oh, I could put together a philanthropic plan. So let me circle back to this question again regarding the challenges. What have you seen? And I know you've worked in this industry for 2 decades now, about ballpark. What are some of the challenges that come up? Is it just not knowing how to put that plan together to make it successful? Is it the due diligence, or are we back to finding people we can trust? Like, what are some of those core challenges?
Yeah, I think when it comes to families, a lot of times it's one of these things that you don't know what you don't know. And it doesn't, a lot of times the skill set that got a family, if it's a business family that has run something and they've had some great success with that, it's a different skill set. That brought them there. It takes a totally different skill set to give that money away well. And so sometimes it's having to think through things differently, and it may not be the same set of skills that does that. And so I think it's for them, it's a matter of kind of thinking through ways that they want to be strategic about this and opening up to see what some of those opportunities are. My big goal would be to help them to connect to the things that they're passionate about, the things that they're interested in. Because subversively, what I would love to see is that they're going to be more generous when they are able to connect with those things that really drive them forward.
Yeah. So let me ask a really basic question, which is
Hmm.
why give? Because when
Mm,
somebody does come into money, there could also be what is known as like unrestrained, or how do I say it? It's like now all of a sudden they can get 10 pairs of shoes, they can get
that's right.
10 Porsche cars. Yeah. So
Yeah,
why give?
that's a great question. The two people, whether it's Spider-Man or whether it's Jesus, I think they both said some version of with great responsibility. With great, you know, treasure comes great responsibility, great power comes great responsibility. And I think that in that sense, there are a lot of people that are waking up to the realization that when you're given yourself a lot of things, whether you've gone through the process of creating a business or whatever that looks like, when you have resources available to you, we live in an increasingly globalized world where we're all connected. And so I think it's a reckoning and a recognition uh, that we kind of have a responsibility for that. And so it's what do we do with that responsibility and how do we take that, do we take that seriously and what can we how can we do that? So I think, you know, again, whether you're coming at that from a faith perspective or not, uh, there's a lot of importance in thinking through who we are as humans and what our relationship is to the rest of the people on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just going to be service to self.
So,
Yeah. Well, it is interesting how interconnected the world is, and always what we give, it can come back. And, the good that we do, we think can be invisible or forgotten. And yet, that could be that thing that saves us one day, 50 years down the road or something. So let me
so
bring up, yeah, I think that your company has a process where for a half a day or some amount of time, they will pull together people in a room and think about the vision, the values. Would you share anything about this? And I'm not asking to give out like proprietary information or anything,
sure.
but what I'm really asking you to speak into is what is the value of having the seasoned advisors there compared to if they try
Yeah.
and just pull together family members at a picnic or even an individual on a Sunday at a coffee shop.
No, I think you're spot on. And yeah, there's the truth is at some level you can write a check on your own and you don't have to have a philanthropy advisor. But at the same time, a lot of times what it helps to do is to we come alongside families, high net worth individuals, and even companies, and basically help to extract out the things that they are passionate about. So creating for themselves a set of focus areas, creating for themselves a mission statement, personal kind of, a lot of what I was intrigued when we first started talking was kind of this overlap of our Venn diagram of areas of like creating legacy, defining legacy. What does that look like? And so it's really for them some of that same conversation. And it's conversations beyond what the portfolio is to say, how do we kind of look at this and determine the things that you value? And so the first, chunk of what we do in that time is really kind of dig deep and find out the things that drive them, that wake them up in the mornings and kind of get them going. And then the other piece of that is that once you do that, there's a lot of questions that people, again, if they're new to this space or if they're trying to figure out kind of the best mechanisms for whether it's a donor advised fund or a trust or a foundation, there's all sorts of different mechanisms that may be better tools for others, and others may require other things. So it's thinking through like things about, is this something that you want to pay out in your lifetime? Do you want to accept requests? Do you want to accept multi-year requests? Do you want to like thinking about like all sorts of kind of questions that come into the world of philanthropy to kind of process those and understand that. So what happens is after we do like a giving retreat, or it can be broken out into several sessions as well. But if we were to have a giving retreat with folks, they would leave with a set of tools and documents and giving guidelines that could kind of point them in the right direction for the next decade or even longer. And they can, happily just go and take that and implement that and put that to work and let that benefit kind of all of their philanthropy. Or the other option is that say that they do that and then they are in a place where they don't have the time or energy or capacity to kind of maintain that. Um, I can also be brought on as a fractional essentially a fractional advisor in an ongoing capacity to support them with their philanthropy ongoing as a coach and advisor.
Yeah, yeah. What I think is so powerful about this, and I'm sure Jake also knows the value of mirroring, the fact that all of it gets written down. Because a lot of times we don't hear ourselves, but if there are others that can witness our words, our feelings, our perspective on issues, and then we see it back, even if it's like a quarter later, a year later, it's like, oh yeah, that's really important. I forgot that. When we get swept up in the busyness of life. And again, that's like that brings like the meaning forward. It makes life interesting and exciting to live, to want to jump out of bed in the morning and go, I want more of this life. I don't want it to end. Yeah.
That's right. No, that's right. And I think that when like you said, that sometimes it just takes someone asking some well-timed questions. I think that, this world, uh, I think more and more people are starting to see the value of important and really critical questions
Mm.
over answers. Instead of having, all the answers to all the things, like asking good questions is a really, really important skill set. So
Yeah. Curiosity is amazing. And it also takes energy.
that's right. That's
Yeah, it
right.
takes mental energy. And I think as humans, sometimes we just want easy and simple. But when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to designing a legacy, because I'm not going to say it's a marathon or a triathlon, but it's not a microwave dinner. It's not like in
Hmm.
one weekend. It's listening, it's leaning in, it's asking those quality questions. And then it is, like you had said, it's getting curious that the answers do matter. Like your answers
That's right.
matter, my answers matter, Jake's answers matter, and everyone's answers in that room matter. Yeah, and that's also where families have to play nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
there can be differences of like, well, I would like to invest in impact investing, and the prior generation might want to invest in something else. And so that's where, yeah, the advisor especially can be crucial. Okay, let me ask you this question. I'm going to lean in more regarding your company just to give a listener an idea regarding, what your company does. You spoke about an exposure tour, and hidden passions can be uncovered. And again, clients are given that space to go deeper on issues that they already care about. So say more because again, this is like almost like family meetings. It's like going to that space, but then staying in that space. Yeah. So it's not just one and
Yeah.
done.
I think so, and I think the exposure tour piece is really for those that are interested in uh, funding into or kind of doing philanthropy in a space that maybe they haven't had a physical presence in. So whether that's an international travel, I'm thinking about some families that I've traveled with, where going to Haiti, for example, and spending a week there and getting both, whether it's the older generation or the younger generations, just what that does is to open your eyes and to see the world in a fresh new way. And there's ways to do that obviously can be exploitative of the people and things like that. We do this in a way obviously that provides dignity and respect, but it's connecting with people and it's about relationships, right? Fundamentally, it's about understanding kind of who people are. And when you get to see somebody and you get to walk in their shoes and see what their life might be like, it opens you up to say, wow, this makes sense. When I send my money here, I now know what is happening. And it kind of opens your eyes to the way the world lives. And it doesn't always match what we think of it and the perceptions that we have, whether we're, the talking heads on the radio or whatever it might be, our perceptions of things. There's nothing like going there and physically being there to understand, uh, you know, who people are and what their experiences are like. So, and I think that's a powerful way for people to kind of then be more connected to the things that they're giving to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when someone steps beyond, and I'm going to use the word bubble for a moment,
That's
and
right.
yeah, their bubble, their comfort zone, it's like, wow, there's so much more. It's kind of like when you learn something and then you realize, wow, there's so much more I still need to learn. Like I thought I had it all figured out. And then I went to that place and I walked a mile in that person's footsteps, and wow, there's a lot that I take for granted. But at the same time, you have perhaps a newfound respect for someone else because they're managing their life regarding what God has given, for them to grow into and through and so forth. Very cool. Any other success stories? And again, this is for someone who might not know what a philanthropic advisor is, or they want to expand and see who else they could work with. Because I think in today's day and age, it's also how well do advisors work together in the team approach.
That's right. No, I think that's good. The other things that I would say is just that people that um, have participated with me and kind of walked in that journey with me. I think it's interesting to see them kind of really connect to the things that they're passionate about. And they may have said, "Oh, I think I'm passionate about this," but until they start seeing some of the work and connecting with the people and connecting with the organizations, and families are different, right? Some people, they once they do it, once they kind of write their check or they set their money aside or send their money on, they want to read an impact report, and that's what they love doing. Is they love reading the big 30, 40 page report about what their money did, and that is enough for them. Other people, they want to meet on the ground, they want to see the people, they want to have connections with the executive directors and have those conversations. And so what's really cool is just to see it ignite a passion and kind of fan a flame for people when they're able to connect with the things that they truly are passionate about. And so I think it's opening people's eyes to not just once they connect to that themselves, what they usually do is they become a champion or an enthusiast for whatever topic it is that they're doing. So it's not just their own philanthropy dollars that they're bringing, they're not just their own money, but they can actually start to see, I could be a catalyst for something larger than this. And they're starting now to talk to their other family members or their friends or their business partners or whoever that might be. And next thing you know, it's not just the scope of whatever, dollars that they're kind of stewarding, but it's this larger picture, and they're bringing more people to the table, and it's increasing the size of the pie to bring more dollars to solve some of the problems that we see around the world.
Yeah. So let's bridge it over to legacy for a moment. How does
Mhm.
a well thought out, well planned philanthropic plan then contribute to one's legacy, whether that's the individual's legacy, a family's legacy, or an organization's legacy? Because one of the things, again, we had chatted about in the preamble is some individuals, they don't have families. And I can think of a number of individuals, and we joked about this a little bit, they might leave something to their pets, the cat that they always loved or their dog, but they might not have had children. So again, so whether it's from the perspective of an individual, a family, or an organization, how does this get to lean into this subject of legacy?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about connecting to intentionality, and it's connecting to the things that when you're able to be strategic with your philanthropy and you're able to think about this, you're able to kind of set aside and say, these are the things I care about. And those things, by definition, when you've defined your values, when you've defined your focus areas and your mission and kind of who you are and who you want to be, that is what legacy definition is, right? That legacy defining is. And so when you do that, that becomes wrapped up in who you are. And then you get to live that out through implementing that, through seeing those funds go. So you don't have to have money that you're passing on to a next generation. There's several folks that actually want to give that away in their lifetime. And so it's a matter of literally kind of not necessarily setting aside things for future generations, but it's literally in their lifetime seeing that. It's kind of this interesting phenomenon where you're able to kind of see the joy that comes back to you from seeing that go out now. So you don't even have to think about things long term or past when you're gone, but you're able to see that now. Also, the other thing that I would say is when people give to things now, sometimes you're addressing some of the opportunity costs for problems that exist now. So, like, what if, for example, we were to come together and solve for malaria, right, in this lifetime? To think about the opportunity cost that would save for generations if we were able to kind of address some of these problems that seem to be intractable by pulling together our resources. So,
Yeah, I think we're really well, America is an interesting experiment as well as country, but I think most individuals that get born into America have that head start. And I think that when you have access to education and medical, like when you're talking about the epidemic of malaria, really truly the head start is the head start. And if you can grant that to somebody else and give them that opportunity, it makes such a difference in their life.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. And there's, just to be very candid, I didn't plan on saying this, but there's a lot of folks that look like me they come from places of power and privilege, and they're born on third base, and they think they've hit a triple, and it's like one of those things of recognizing kind of where we are and who we are, and then having the responsibility to kind of how do we live that out with the way that we can give back.
Yeah, yeah. Before I transition over to where legacy gets personal, would you like to share any reactions or thoughts, Jake, regarding the wonderful world of designing a philanthropy plan, or if you've come across individuals in your journey? I know I read your bio, and you've served as a chaplain for the U.S. Army, and you've coached a number of individuals with its leadership, or all
Uh-huh.
of it. So, any thoughts?
Ultimately, I don't know of any life of meaning and purpose that isn't pointing beyond itself. And so when I'm listening to Jonathan, I think I'm listening to somebody who helps people figure out what's it all for? Where's this all headed? What real difference do I want to make? So, and I know, of course, Angelina, your work is anchored right down there in those big questions. But what a shame it would be if somebody worked 14 hours a day for years, or all it takes time and effort, and what a shame it would be if it didn't add up for anything that rippled out.
Yeah, thank you. That there is that bigger picture of connection and meaning, and like you had said, what is this all for? I can't
Hmm.
tell you the number of times I've broken bread with an individual, and they're doing well financially in life, and they've said at the table, is this all that there is? Now, of course, I want to say something regarding like religion or spirituality, but
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
All right. Well, any other thoughts, Jake, before I ask you what the word legacy means to you personally?
No, no, just enjoying listening to you all. So.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
well, I'll just jump right in about for me myself with legacy. I try to shift from an ownership model to a stewardship model. That legacy is not something I lock in and make sure stays exactly like I want it even after I'm gone. Instead, I see legacy as something that I set free to be received like a baton by the next generation so that they can carry it in freedom and joy. Um, guided by the principles and commitments that have defined my own life. So that's what legacy means to me personally.
Oh, that's lovely. So, in 1 to 2 sentences, what would you like your holistic legacy to be?
More trust between people and more families healed.
Oh, that's powerful. Say that one more time if you would.
More trust between people and more families healed.
That's simple but powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Keep
Yeah.
me focused.
What would you say are your top 3 to 4 core values? And I always like to ask this question because I think of core values not just being like the legs of a chair that hold the legacy up, but also those influencing factors that can drive that legacy plan forward. So it doesn't get distracted when the wind blows left or right regarding, whatever it is that life throws at us. It's being able to return to those 3 or 4 core values. So what say you, Jake?
Yeah, I mentioned trust. That's one. Uh, Respect, not just in courtesy and manners, but in a sense of humility and awe, and a responsibility to sustain that, and resilience. What does it take to fall down 9 times and get up 10? And what are the opportunities there? So those are what I'd say today.
Yeah, I want to read something else that was on your website. You had written, it's not about control, it's about composure. Leaders don't just react, they respond. They don't just manage relationships, they master resilience. And I thought that was really good in the sense that life is hard, but we don't always get to see when they get knocked down 9 times. We just go,
Mm.
oh, look, they won.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody has a story. I mean, if you listen enough, people will tell you where they were and what they learned and how they got through.
Yes. Okay, so coffee table book. If you were to set aside a weekend or two a month for the next year, to design
Sure.
your hardcover coffee table book?
And
What
by
images?
the way, I love this project of yours. I'd never heard of it, and I was telling my wife about it. So I just love that you do this with folks. Um, I think about one of the clients' experiences most powerful to me was a woman that I worked with who had had a very difficult childhood and every reason in the world to run off. And she did go off and be successful. And she worked really hard to come back to this Appalachian community and even the family of her of origin to restore and reunite in a way that upheld her own dignity. So one would be a photo of a family reunion with a seat at the table for everybody. Um, I think another coffee table book page would be a letter for somebody who decided to stay, to hang in there instead of cut off or walk off. And I think thirdly, a photo of my own kids running wild and free. They're both young men off and enjoying life, and that is the legacy that I want for them. Is that not that they are living my life over a second time, but that they're living their own fully, joyfully, faithfully, and free.
That's wonderful and beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I had shared with you prior to today's conversation is that my paternal grandfather, Richard Carleton, had also studied at Harvard Divinity School. But if I
Yeah.
go back to this idea of a coffee table book, if I go back 100 years, it would have been the time of the Spanish flu. So a different
Okay.
era. Yeah.
Yeah.
But his father, had been successful during the Great Depression as an insurance broker, like multiple
Hmm.
homes and Cadillacs. But what was not talked about, number one, was that Richard Carlton's older brother passed away too soon from a heart attack. And so
Hmm.
again, how did he deal with that? I don't know. It was never written down. And so when I
Yeah.
go to my parents' house, I think about they've got other coffee table books of like architects or fashion designers
Right,
or
right.
certain cities in the world, but like where is the hardcover coffee table book for the maternal side as well as the paternal side, but nobody
Yeah.
ever took the time or saw the value. And I know a part of it was my dad said, well, nobody asked and no one, we didn't think no one, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you are facilitating so many people capturing that meaning and that real legacy for the generations to come. So thank you.
thank you for also speaking into it. One of the things that before I transition over to Jonathan, one of the things that I talk about is this idea of positive role models for every individual that's willing to speak on this platform, they get
Hmm.
to be a voice that say, I'm designing my legacy. I'm going to plan for it. It's not going to be something that
Right.
gets avoided or procrastinated on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Each of us has the opportunity and responsibility.
Yes. So Jonathan, what does the
I
word
love it.
legacy mean to you personally? Because it's so much more than Webster's or the etymology of this word.
Yeah, that's so tricky. I mean, I feel like at some quintessential level, it's kind of what is passed down, right, from one generation to the next. And ideally, when I think about legacy, it's not even just one generation to the next. It's kind of like from here on out and for here, for into eternity kind of thing. And one of the things that we always encourage in the nonprofit space is that founders that leave things, you know, true legacy and what you would hope that people would live up to is that even when they leave, founders of organizations or businesses or whatever, that things are actually better off after they're gone because they've set things on the right tracks and they've kind of got things ready to set up for success. So to me, I think legacy is really just about what is being passed on to the
Mm.
next generation and leaving the next generation in a place where they have all of the tools and all of the things necessary to truly succeed.
Yeah, thank you for speaking into that. Yeah, what is it that we pass on, and do we care enough to be aware of what it is we pass on? Because some people can be apathetic. I always say what apathy is doing to your legacy is just not right. Because some people can escape, to all of the different flavors of temptations in today's world, and yet, the next generation needs them because they're going to find role models somewhere. Yeah. So speaking of
So,
passing on great things what would you say are your top three or four core values?
Yeah, I think my core values would be tied up in justice and mercy,
Mm.
equity. I think love. I mean, I think ultimately, like for me personally, my legacy, I would hope that I would have um, it would be a legacy of radical generosity that shows that you can care about justice and mercy and equity and all those things and love and be compassionate about others, but at the same time not losing like your sense of humor in your life. So I think that if you can hold those things in tension, I think that that would be what I would love my legacy to be.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, coffee table book. If you were to
Mm,
set aside a weekend or
I love
two
it.
a month for the next year, what images, stories, lessons might fill its
I
pages?
I think first of all, it would be important to make sure that it's known here that it would be actually a children's book that would probably be illustrated. You know, if I could choose it, it'd be illustrated by John Clausen. My my wife gives away children's books. She runs a ministry called For the Love of Reading, and it does some fantastic work getting books in kids' hands. So we have books all over the place, but this it would be a children's book, and it would be accessible to everybody. It'd be the first thing. But no, it'd be filled with I think it'd be filled with pictures. It'd be pictures of family and friends and vacations, and it would be not these like stodgy pictures where everybody's kind of stationary together, but it'd be candid photos of capturing moments that are shared together, and outdoor trips and all sorts of fun things that would just be filled with that book, and then you would be able to see just this life of love throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, that's lovely. I look forward to when there is that year that the two of you finally design that hardcover coffee table book. Because again, we have to schedule it in because as life and the years go by, it just seems like time gets faster. And
Hmm.
if we don't make it intentional, it just gets like next weekend, next weekend, next weekend. Yeah.
So,
So as we draw to a close, Jake, would you share a great website if a listener would like to learn more, and as well as any closing thoughts on this subject of legacy?
Sure. Yeah, people can find me at gen2genleadership.com. That's GENG2TOGEN leadership.com. Um, I promote in with everyone I work with taking the long haul view, thinking about generations down the line. And so I just appreciate that both of you all are my companions in that journey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so gen2genleadership.com.
Hmm.
Yes, I'll
That's right.
also make sure that it's in the show notes. And
Thanks.
Jonathan, what is a great website if someone is ready to finally design that philanthropic plan?
I love it. It's 1010 strategies. So the number's 1010
Okay.
strategies.com. And I guess closing thought is this is more of a story of the way I want to help again people think shift in their thinking is just we don't have a lot of cathedral thinking these days.
Okay.
Back in the days when people would build cathedrals, this is something that wouldn't be done in one generation. In fact, it wouldn't even be done in two generations. Oftentimes, cathedrals were designed up, created, and then the construction of that cathedral had to be passed down to multiple generations. So it's thinking through things. How do we invest in a generation in the future in ways that are kind of thinking way beyond just ourselves? And like legacy to me is tied up in that as well. So it's matching that long-term thinking about our future and kind of making a difference in that way.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that, every bit of input that both of you brought today is incredibly valuable because just to have the conversation, to hold the space, to speak into it, because as you probably know, Jake, from coaching, it's like there can be you and me, but then there's this third entity called the relationship. And I think in
Mm,
today's conversation, it's like there's the three of us as individuals speaking, but then there's this fourth entity being the legacy. And so when that gets acknowledged, then it can be developed further. And it's no longer, again, like that invisible pink elephant in the room. It's like, oh, that's the legacy. We get to design that thing.
yeah, absolutely. I love it.
All right. Well, before I read my closing paragraph, I just want to say thank you so much for both of you taking the time today to be a guest speaker and to speak into this. Jake, you talked about this idea of, from ownership to a legacy model, or I'm sorry, ownership to a stewardship model. And again, thinking about like, from like that position of perhaps power to that position then of being able to give and realizing that, we're here for a minute, the breath of time, and then being able to realize that it's, in we're passing it on, as Jonathan would say, and what is it that we are passing on or passing down? So, so I just want to just do a real quick recap. Thank you for your values, Jacob: respect, trust, whether it's in humility and awe, as well as resilience. And to Jonathan, just circling back to the values of justice, mercy, equity, as well as this idea of radical generosity. So, yes, we set out with the intention of, what if your situation today and the pressure that you find yourself under, is not your destiny and you always have choices. And I think we have fulfilled that business promise. So thank you very much for your time, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, USA, but international in those I coach and consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And thank you to Jake and to Jonathan for speaking into your legacies.